Good evening, good afternoon from the Greek house of Davos World Economic Forum. This is a debate on sovereign wealth funds emerging for growth. And for the next hour, we say hello to Mr. Umєрова from the Ukrainian Sovereign Fund and to Mr. Gregory Dimitriadis from the head of the Greek Sovereign Fund. Let me introduce them briefly to you. Mr. Umєrова, 40 years, economist. He has been a parliamentarian from 2019 to 2022. And since then, he is the head of the State Property Fund of Ukraine. He is born in a Tatar family from Crimea, and he's also very much involved in projects for culture, human rights, and social projects that regard the Tatar community. And Mr. Dimitriadis from Greece, he is a chief executive and executive board member of the Growth Fund, the National Fund of Greece, since February 2021. He is an engineer, but he has also 2 masters for telecommunications and international business relations. He held quite a number of executive jobs in international companies, but he was also running Enterprise Greece, so trying to get people to invest in Greece. He was Secretary General for International Economic Affairs of the Ministry of Development in Greece. And so in this case, it will be very interesting to have them both and share experiences, but also opinions on what can be learned about carrying on for 2 economies that are quite important to Europe, even although they're not the very biggest, but I think they are at the moment at crucial points. Myself, let me say one word to myself. I'm Tobias Piller. I was correspondent for the economy of Greece from 2012 to 2021. Now I'm back in Frankfurt, working still for Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung. So let me ask first Mr. Dimitriadis and then Mr. Umєrова about what can a state-run fund, what can it offer as an opportunity for the development of a national economy. Let's then look at experiences, risks, and future criteria for the future. So please, Mr. Dimitriadis, can you give us some short ideas about opportunities of such a fund?
Yes, thank you very much, first of all, for the invitation, and I want to thank you for moderating this discussion, and also Greek House Davos and Irini Badaraki that brought us together. And it's definitely, I'm very happy, and it's an honor to be able to discuss also with Rustema, because I think that both countries, they can help each other, and especially now that Ukraine goes through this extremely difficult situation with the invasion of Russia, and they have shown to the world how brave they are, and they have managed to not just defend the country, but also be here and discuss with us the potential that there is there for reconstruction and for the future of Ukraine. Because both countries, Greece had a deep economic crisis for the past decade, and although we were considered a model country organizing the Olympic Games, then we went to exact opposite perception of the world, the bad ship in Europe, I guess. And still, we managed to recover and now be in a position of having steady growth rates. despite the pandemic and all the other crises. And at the same time, of course, Ukraine in a much more difficult situation since the invasion. But I think that still we both realized that we have allies. And in the case of Greece, it was allies, especially our European partners, that helped us with economic support when the markets were closed for us. But also we see that everybody's especially in the West, is supporting Ukraine. And this is it's very important, as it will actually determine the Ukraine's fate, will determine the West's overall positioning authority, as The Economist also recently wrote. But for your questions, are there opportunities? Yes, I think that sovereign wealth funds, state funds, they provide an opportunity to utilize and have a benefit of the state assets for the future generations. I think it is both in the case of Greece and in Ukraine, it is very important that we have the ability to coordinate a big part of state assets in a way that it's not going to be its specific company and its specific ministry and its specific politician to do their efforts, but to have some a fund which will promote both the economic and the social aspect, but in a coordinated way. And I think this is key, and especially because we can mobilize things. We will discuss also later for privatizations, but also the most important thing is to do investments. And state funds can be enablers of foreign direct investment. And this is something that we also consider as an important thing to do. Let's not forget that Greece had to go through a lot of reforms. And many of these had to do with the state-owned enterprises. So what we are here to do as Growth Fund is to guarantee that these state-owned enterprises will follow corporate governance. They will be able to produce the best things they can for the citizens because they deal with public goods, but also to attract investors and partners in all the aspects that we have, since we are across industries. So in that respect, I think that, for example, we, by utilizing the airports we have, or making logistic parks in Athens and Thessaloniki, Greece's second largest city, it is things that we can mobilize this public value instead of being stagnant and be perceived also by the people as something like public sector, and it's not gonna be working very efficiently, but to something that will give opportunity for growth. And that's, I think, what is in parallel also with the Ukrainian fund and Rustem's role, because they also have a similar approach. They are at the first steps. We're also relatively young, but this brings us in a position that we are a little bit more close to, or should be more close to each other, given that other successful sovereign wealth funds, the Norwegians, the Singaporeans, and the others, they have decades of history. They were at our position a few decades ago. So now we are the ones that we want to have a similar impact in the economy, but we are building it now.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Dimitriadis. Certainly, Norway and Singapore have more investment type of funds, so they invest money for future generations. Whereas now, here in Greece or in Ukraine or in other European states, we are more talking about funds that also run state-owned companies. So let me ask Mr. Umєrов, what will be the opportunity of having a state-run fund, a wealth fund for the future of Ukraine? What are the strategic things that you can do with such a fund for the future of Ukraine?
Hi, everybody. Would like to thank for the invitation, and I would like to additional thank Irene Vantaraki for making it possible as well, Greek House Davos. From the perspective of where we are and where we want to go, as you know that for the last 9 years, we've been very direct in our desire to become a European Union country, a country that would be future NATO alliance. That's where our people want to be. And for this reason, they are making all possible changes, reforms, transformations going on in the country. And our business culture also is changing. At this stage, during the full war going on in our land, we still feel that this is a new reality and we should not stop. So that is why government took a decision to consolidate all state-owned enterprises in the state property fund or state assets fund to have a deep analysis first on a strategy. What are we going to privatize? Second one, what are we going to manage? And how we are going to manage it, and with what companies we could expand. So basically speaking, Ukraine gave a mandate to State Property Fund to start a small-scale and large-scale privatization. In the privatization, this is an opportunity for many companies that are willing to expand, that are willing to become a global market player. And that is why we are now privatizing some of our agricultural assets, such as processing plants. We are privatizing small port infrastructure. We're privatizing some of the real estate assets. We're privatizing factories. We also are keen to privatize or find a strategic partner in energy sector, which is utilities, electricity production, crude oil exploration, or oil and gas, refineries, oil refineries. We're also keen to find partners in retail chains. So that is what we're looking in privatization sector. As for the additional value add and opportunity, I would say that there is opportunity to build a smart factories that will be physically exporting it to the Western Europe or Europe or North America. There is a huge sector that is in IT, telecom, media, and technology, which is not tapped, especially in infrastructure technology, tower business, fiber optic business, satellite business. And I would also mention that infrastructure or PPP, private public partnerships, is an opportunity. So at this stage, Ukraine is open. It is capable to implement this through taking proper bills, passing the bills, allowing the state property fund to privatize, be a partner for our foreign to become a partner for foreign direct investment partners. So we're open, we're capable, and we're able to perform these partnerships.
Is there any experience, Mr. Dimitriadis, that you think should be taken into account when looking at these state wealth funds experiences to repeat or to avoid?
Yes, of course, and that's the real value of exchanging views with Rustema, as we also do with other sovereign wealth funds, since they have been in our position before. And we also have a very recent case for Greece. Greece went through this road the previous years. So it's something very fresh in the memory of everybody, because we ended up on the brink of economic collapse and bankruptcy. We had to go through specific reforms, and we had to do a lot of
which reforms? What was the thing that made things change? In the beginning, there was a different government, a left-wing government, which wanted to avoid privatizations. Was that an advantage, or then there was a change of government? You had a liberal government. And what changes did you put into place to make it more successful? What is the experience in a nutshell?
Yes, well, at the beginning of the previous decade, the Greek economy was rather closed. And that's why the idea was to have some privatizations and push for some privatizations, because this would open up some sectors of the economy. Okay, maybe the benefit will not be that we get a lot of money because of these privatizations, but the benefit will be that there will be foreign funds and some things that the state runs in a specific way. Private sector will run it in a better way with a greater effect to the overall economy and the society. Of course, there was a lot of resistance, and the resistance was also coming from the public, and therefore also from the then opposition parties and the Syriza, the left government later. But it was also important lesson learned for that the society should learn and see the value of these economic adjustment reforms. It's not easy, because the perception was like, okay, now we are almost bankrupt, which means that foreign states will come and take the wealth of the country, and therefore we will, we are just selling out. Which is also maybe even the perception of some with the Ukrainian case. A country that was perceived very closed as an economy, and now it's going to be after the war, it's going to be all these allies who will come and just take the wealth of the country or establish themselves. Well, this is not the case, and we can see with Greece that it is important to have a good mix of privatizations, but also how to bring investments, because the key thing is to realize that what the society needs is more jobs and opportunity for growth, and this comes through investments. So Greece went through the difficult years also with the referendum in 2015, but then after 2017, 18, I think everybody realized, everybody in the political spectrum, that we have to abide with the European norm and operate as a European Western country. And this realization is what helped Greece, and of course with a liberal government, as you say, to change course of the country, and the last couple of years to reintroduce and regain trust in the economic world. So the experience is that important that there is a lot of communication, because all the stakeholders, which include the public, they must be engaged, and it must be explained to the local communities as well what happens every step of the way. So the narrative on why you do this and why it's going to be a benefit for the present, but also for the future generation, should be very well explained. And of course, there are challenges that we have to face, like the energy transition, which is extremely important, and it is also an opportunity to do things.
Let me interrupt for a small question from Mr. George Demetrios Vlatakis, who says, but should there be an evaluation of the work of the sovereign fund by rating agencies?
We have to be very transparent and open. That's the most important thing. So that's why, for example, we have a specific strategic plan with very specific targets and KPIs, which we publish, and in an annual report we also see what we have done. But of course, yes, we want to be rated, as some of our portfolio companies are rated. And this, as we establish ourselves, I think it's important that it's going to help us to be as transparent and rated as possible. That's why also, even for our financial aspects, we have, we follow what is our net asset value progressing over the years, or for the environment, for the sustainability part, where we also see how to reduce emissions, and of course have all the other metrics. So we have to be very specific in order to be able also to convince people that there is a change, and in all aspects of what we do, from the financials to the more social ones, to the digital transformation ones. Everything has to be backed up by numbers as well.
So thank you very much. Let's ask Mr. Umєrov, what are the experiences up to now, and maybe what have been risks in the past with sovereign wealth funds in countries that were controlled by a socialist economy, that have been the heirs of socialist economies. So can you give us an overview about your point of view about experiences and also about risks in this?
Sure. The largest risk that I see, unfortunately, it's the culture of post-Soviet Union, which we are, with all our let's say, partners are killing daily. So we have inherited this infectious disease from Soviet Union, which always makes us sad, and sometimes it's being manipulated that Ukraine is a not transparent or corrupted country, and many of our enemies are using it. So I would like to say that Ukraine have achieved huge reforms, success in establishing many agencies, courts in anti-corruption, and most of the state-owned enterprises are more or less now managed by the new governance. Yes, there are still challenges, but I would not say that there are super big problem or blocks that we're not able to challenge or tackle. So this is the largest probably risk within. What is else as a risk or is Russian aggression, because it is also one of the largest, let's say, violations of international law that has happened to the country after the Second World War. And we're finding solutions to it as well. We have a multilateral investment guarantee agency, MIGA, of the World Bank Group, that our Ministry of Economy has achieved a result with, to ensure the risks of the investors that are entering to our market. As for the experiences, I would say that we have resumed the privatization process during the full-scale war, and we've been very successful for the last 6 months, and have attracted several billion in hryvnia in investments from the local investors and some of the foreign investors, because we were privatizing the processing plants, the agri-food processing plant. We've been successful on privatizing some of the small ports. So our experience was that the pricing when we go to the auction is increased 3-4 folds. We're seeing that new investor is monetizing day one. They commercialize it because there is still demand, and we hope that after we win the war, they will have good market cap, which I think would be 10-fold, 20-fold, or 10x, 20x. But the day one, as I said, just to wrap up, they make money.
So yes, we never forget about the attack that Putin's Russia has done on Ukraine and the victims and the sorrow this is causing, and certainly also on all other losses for all this successful economic activity. But looking at also at the perspectives for Ukraine in the future, can you give us some idea about what should be the organization of the Ukrainian economy in the future? Because there is one point that was important also for the Greek economy to decide how far the Greek economy should be open to competition, to international competition, how far it should be closed. So having it too close, that was in a small state like Greece, a danger to have all political bodies give political chances to their friends and have the so-called oligarchs also in Greece. On the other hand, having a totally internationally open country will mean that maybe it cannot develop all its strengths when it's overwhelmed and also only seen as a tiny, small market from an American or Chinese point of view. So what is the right dosage of opening up the market and of having competition?
From our perspective, I would say that land reform that we've been successfully performing for the last 2-3 years shows that we're opening it for the local market for 2-3 years, that the local investors would have sufficient lands that would be used for the farming, processing, and in 2024 it will be open for the foreign investors. And it's a good investment for everyone, because the land reform allows us to have land to be purchased or rented, and we have made a steady, let's say, transition. At this stage, as a state property fund, we already managed by today, for the last 6 months, we've been able to aggregate up to 200 to 300,000 hectares of land, and by the end of the year, hopefully, we will be one of the largest land owners as a state that would be able to lease it to investors through the very transparent electronic auction. In addition to it, we say that all the small privatization allows small, medium enterprises to not to lose time and to allocate or relocate their businesses from the war-torn regions to the safe, let's say, regions where they could operate. And we think that in the industries during the war, which could be strategic, we analyze the approach, we discuss with Parliament, we discuss with cabinet of ministers. We discuss with business society what could be done. So the first thing that comes to our mind is to prepare these strategic assets until the war finish, making it legally clean, financially stable, so that after the war we could open it up for the large privatization. So we prepare some of the assets, but we're not stopping on showing the progress on a small privatization. And we focus also to the critical minerals which Ukraine possesses for the long-term investors, or by partially opening the privatization or selling some parts of the shares. So those, let's say, approach and learning from Greece, learning from experience of our Eastern European partners, that also gives us a, let's say, a good example how should we have our approach done. So we're putting up the processes, we're putting up the priorities which could be done today, we're putting up the legal frames, and that's how we are thinking on allowing the investors, let's say, to come and have comfortable investment.
Thank you. So let's come back to Mr. Dimitriadis. What is, we have been running forward already with towards the question of privatization, but can you still give us some of your experience, Mr. Dimitriadis, about open or closed economies? How do these change the way the economy, the companies behave? And maybe closed economies even more a risk for a state-run fund. Can this be?
Yes, of course. And I think that the key thing is what Rustem said, is that there must be change in the business culture. And we went through this, and also it's a task for Ukraine, so they get out of their more, let's say, Soviet past into the modern economy, and this is key also for us. But we have such examples. Imagine that in 2015, so relatively very recently, there was a discussion about giving the operation, not the ownership, but the operation of 14 airports of Greece to an operator. So there was a bidding process, and there were a lot of reactions. However, there was a company that won, an international company, Fraport, and you understand, Germany was not even that popular in Greece at the time, but still this German operator started to work and invest in the airports. And suddenly, after a couple of years, everybody realized what a great thing this was, and how now the airports can welcome in better conditions tourists. Tourists want to come and visit, and they are enablers of growth also in the local economy. So now we have the rest of the 23 airports that we have in our portfolio, that while a few years ago they didn't want to participate in this, and now all the local communities is actually saying, oh, no, we want to be like the other airports in the other areas. And this shows that when a privatization or giving a long-term concession to something that has been well planned, and it delivers on the promise that you make, then this makes you credible, and even the public changes the mentality that helps things progress. And we have various other examples like that. imagine that in our portfolio we also have we're minority shareholders of the power company, but we still control the management. But we used to have majority stake, and this was reduced. But we prefer that because we prefer to see ourselves as investors. And as investors, it makes more sense to have 34% instead of 51%, because it will have more value. And also, this rest of the percentage goes to international funds, very strong ones, that can help the company a lot with the contribution, and also give the money that now Greece is even able to expand into the Balkans. And this was completely a different story a few years ago. This comes as in a way that it can be successful exactly because it was well planned, explained, and we moved it forward.
Well, it's
okay,
nice to hear
about examples. Yes,
about successes of privatization stories. Personally, I had followed the story of the 14 airports that were going to be run by now are run by the Frankfurt airport, and I found it a disaster in communication. And so some politicians could also say that this is a colonial imposition by Germans. And this airport in Frankfurt was not able to communicate that maybe when they buy something, having all airports in South America, in India, and earlier on also in St. Petersburg, they have better prices maybe than the airport of Rhodes. But maybe if some mayors and their friends on the board of the local airport, they don't like the idea of having to leave this post and of a political way of running a company. So, but this is maybe still a problem, a risk of state-run funds that politics wants to interfere, like a local mayor who wants to interfere in a local airport. Maybe a national government wants to interfere into national companies. How do you see the risk of this today? Is it maybe nice to less the risk today, but maybe after the 2 elections things will change?
Now, I think this is a very important point because in many cases, and especially for some countries that have been under economic troubles like Greece or Ukraine with the Soviet past, there is the perception that the political the politicians will determine what will happen in the state-owned enterprises, and they will treat them as their toys or something like that. So it is extremely important that we have this entity as growth fund here, which the most important thing maybe that it does is that it guarantees some corporate governance. And the good thing, especially in our case, is that we're independent of the political cycles. We are appointed through a supervisory board, and we also have, in our case, the European Commission and the ESM, the European Stability Mechanism, that they don't take any part in our business decision making, but they guarantee and they observe that we are independent, because there is it is also according to the OECD guidelines. It is important to separate policy making, which always remains to the government, to the operational execution, which is how these state-owned enterprises should be run. Someone can decide that they want to have the metro for 24 hours, for example, and that's a political decision, and the government has also to compensate for that, and or especially if they want the ticket price to be low. But on the other hand, on how the company will be run and who is going to be in charge and who is going to be this has to be an independent decision that will guarantee meritocracy. And that's the most important thing, as you mentioned. It's like, okay, there are some mayors or so other, they have friends on boards of directors. And this is the problem. That's why we don't, that's where we lose trust. The more meritocracy we have and the more transparent we are, then this is something that also the society sees, but also the investors, because the investors are very well said, Rustem said, is they want to make money. And most of the money will come when there is an opportunity. Like Ukraine now, it's a fantastic opportunity because they are in a war, and we all know that after any war, there is going to be growth and a need for reconstruction of the country. But if this is complemented with the right corporate governance, it attracts the best investors rather than just portfolio funds or others. So I think this is important. Now, of course, everything is an evolution. In Greece, we also took time, and it's still it needs time also for the political system to be able to adjust to this reality. It happened to everybody. It happened even in Sweden.
To get used to companies that are not their toy anymore, maybe, yes. Let's turn to Mr. Umєrова. There has also been a question in the chat. Can it be said that you are optimist about the war that is going towards an end? Or are you doing long-term plans?
We, of course, need to not only become a NATO EU, but G20 country. So that's why long-term is our everything. But we show the short-term plans by defending our countries, by pulling them out of our territory, kicking them everywhere in the north, in the east. So basically, it's hard, of course, because we're alone and with the partners' assistance. And if the supply of weapons will be supplied on time, we're sure that we will be kicking them from our sovereign soil, and all our occupied territories will be free. We understand that the opportunity comes afterwards in rebuilding Ukraine. Russians have made up to, as the estimates show by Ministry of Economy, up to 700 billion in damages. So there would be a huge opportunity for engineering, procurement, contracting, management companies in rebuilding the infrastructure, roads, tolls, PPP agreements, hospitals, anything that it deals with infrastructure. So the electricity lines, the factories. So this is the huge opportunity for the European and other partners that would be willing to bring some expertise, knowledge, architectural design that would be designed for the future. Why? Because that's where the money, we hope, will come from the government sector and from the private enterprises. So I do agree with Gregory that this is opportunity, and we would be welcoming companies now to start researching, to start coming, to start opening representative offices, and we as a state property fund could be their partners in it, to look to become a JV partner or in anything that they could sustain towards the competitorship in the market.
So let's thank you. And may I come back also to this point of privatization? You said that in the long run you want to privatize a lot. Did we understand this right? I mean, after the fall of the Berlin Wall, there was a very there was an experience in Eastern Germany that has created a lot of discussion, because there were 12,000 companies and 8 million employees, and everything had to be privatized as fast as possible. And they privatized in more or less 4 years, and then they started to dismantle the agency itself. But there has been a lot of criticism about it, whereas others said, look, just dismantling everything that has been left from socialist times. That is not the case in Ukraine, because you had, as we now learn, quite a successful economy, much more successful than many people in Western Europe thought. But anyway, if there's a state group, should a big part of this be privatized fast, or should are there any reasons why to keep some part, and or to keep some strategic parts, or to develop some things that you want to develop through state strategies?
Yeah, well, I would tell that when I became a chairman, like 6 months ago, I was told that there was 130,000 state-owned enterprises and communal properties. And at this stage, when I take over, I see that there are 3,600 companies scattered all over the cabinet of ministers, different agencies, ministries, and we've already consolidated up to 70% of these companies inside of the state property fund, and we hope by the end of the year we will finalize the remaining 30%. So now there is always a discussion inside of the country and outside. It's just an let's say ideological. The world is divided into two things. One, they say let's sell everything except dignity. Others say let's stay everything, let's keep everything, so that we could manage. What I can tell that there is a huge mindset after 24th of February last year, after full-scale invasion, when the state-owned enterprises were showing an exemplary work along with the cabinet of ministers, with the government, the president, and the leadership of Ukraine, that they stood against the inhuman act of aggression, and they were exemplary. All state-owned enterprises were working on time. So the mind shift showed that not everything might be privatized, even though we at this stage took a decision that 95% of state-owned enterprises will be privatized or liquidated or filed for bankruptcy by the procedure after taking the legal actions or passing the bills. The remaining 5% we will be creating asset management companies or sovereign funds, where we will put the non-privatized assets that will be generating profits. We will be focusing to real estate investment trust and land bank. So we're introducing new products to the market, financial investment products. And I'm very openly saying that we discussed even disabling agency if we will finalize our mandates. But founding fathers have given us 4 main mandates for the state property fund. One is privatization. Second one is asset management. Third one is to do everything related with rent. And the fourth one, we are a regulator of valuation in the country. So these 4 mandates, if we finalize, let's say, privatization, it will go to corporatization or corporate restructuring, which is that I'm ready to dissolve or file for dissolving, and the cabinet will take a decision. But we are not staying, we're constantly changing, and we would like to achieve these goals on finalization of privatization as soon as possible.
Thank you. Let me ask you for one further step. If you plan a lot of privatizations, as it has been seen in other countries, let's say Italy, where Mario Draghi himself has privatized for 60 billion euros, but then the problem was that maybe the state was not able to regulate properly the market. Because if privatization is done thinking that the market will do its best, there were the limits, where you have the limits of the market, you need good regulation. And do you think it is possible in these difficult times also to get the future market regulations in place?
I think, my personal opinion, we have to deregulate as much as we can at this stage. We, of course, have our vision to become a EU country. So we're integrating to European Union community, and regulation will be, of course, aligned with European Union laws. So at this stage, I don't see any risk. I'm trying to say that deregulating, and we're deregulating actually a lot of things, allows us to move fast, because time is precious and we don't want to lose time. But I'm discussing with my parliamentarian colleagues, ex-colleagues, and with the cabinet of ministers. If there is anything that is strategic, we should be less manipulative. We should sit and look to the future, let's say, share of our economy, what it will be in 10 years. And we see that 50% of our economy will be in services, and including the IT sector. So we're looking to the critical minerals because we possess some of the critical minerals in country, and we're looking to transform the industry to the future rather than managing the existing portfolio. We would like to find an effective owners in a small, medium enterprise and a large businesses, and to sell it, to transform the ownership and focus on strategic assets.
Thank you. So that is a very, very clear picture. So maybe ask Mr. Dimitriadis about his opinion on privatization. How much does it need to be linked to deregulation or to good regulation of the fringes of the market where the market doesn't work properly?
Yes, sometimes, of course, good regulation is essential. And especially when you have an open economy with a lot of private players, you need the regulation, and that's the role of the state. The state should not be big, but should be efficient. And it should make sure that the regulations and the rules apply. Otherwise, you end up in oligopolies or monopolies, and this creates, it defeats the purpose that you did any privatization in the first place. But of course, it depends, and I think that's what Rustema means, because the same thing was happening in Greece. The business environment was very complex. So the idea of deregulating is effectively meaning that when you have complex bureaucracy and issues, you have to limit that to the minimum in order to be able to allow the business to breathe and operate. Still, there must be serious regulators and independent ones in order to make sure that whether it is telecoms or energy or any other field, the rules are applied. I think that what Rustem said, the most important thing is that they will have time for, they have now, it's a time also for preparation, because they have to prepare for when the war is over. And in this, they will identify where they should go for a full privatization, which they should keep, and what it can be something in between, like bringing a business partner and have a PPP partnership. And this is something that we also did. In some cases, we have kept the control. In some cases, we went and we privatized projects. And we did, for example, we didn't privatize the public transport authority, but we did PPP to use for the electronic system in the metro, so to have it like as advanced as possible. So it's not black and white. And in this field of there are many options. So I think each one option has to be explored. And of course, we are very happy, and that's why we discuss also with Rustem is in order to also share our experiences and how we did this selection, as at the same time we look at other entities abroad. But in any case, especially for Ukraine, I think the opportunity is now, because when 10 years ago we were in a very difficult crisis, we were begging as country investors to come and invest. And of course, they were more skeptical. But the ones who dared and invested at that time, now they reap most of the benefits. And now that even investors see that we are just one scale before investment grade, they see the opportunity that there is. But definitely the first comers and the ones that support the country when it's most needed, they are much more appreciated. And I think that's a good timing also for Ukraine.
So, as a journalist, may I ask you to give me 2 or 3 headlines about what are the criteria for success in such a state wealth agency? Just the headlines. 1, 2, and 3. So,
okay, what's the criteria? I think the criteria, it's the most important thing that we should do is to be on one hand transparent, honest, and gain the trust. And then it has to be something which is measured. So the second thing is that whatever we do, it has to be measured, and it has to be on aspects as we have in Greece, in 3 aspects, because you like also 3. The first is the business. So we want economically to see that there are results. It's these state-owned enterprises do not cause more debt, but the opposite. They bring more money and they give dividends to us, which means that we can invest more to the benefit of the economy and also activate our investment part. And the second is the society and the people. And because we are state funds, so we have even more of a responsibility towards the people, and also some of our companies, they have to provide services to the general public, and we must be very, very inclusive, so everybody gets this or has access to public goods. And the third one is the environment. Because, of course, the climate crisis is here, and we have to address it. As state-owned enterprises, we have, especially since we have positioning in energy and so on, we have even greater responsibility to drive the green transition. And for that, it also means that we do something which is sustainable, not just for us now, but also for the future generation. So I think that if we manage to have these 3 things achieved, then this makes us, it shows that it's a good that we exist as a sovereign fund. And I think that this also coupled with this international cooperation, we can have and bring other investors or exchange investments with other countries and be part of networks like a MENA network, which is Mediterranean, mostly sovereign wealth funds and others. It creates an environment that will bring more investors and therefore more growth. So that's our aim.
Thank you. Let's ask Mr. Umєrова, what are his 3 criteria to make his agency a success?
Bring more arms, win Russia, regain all the territory, make them repay for everything they cost, start a rebuilding process. As a fund, this is by default. All the country knows what to do, not only me. As a fund, we will be, of course, following the OECD G20 governance rules, including Santiago principles. And I think the only precious things is time. We don't want to wait. We're doing while we're walking, doing all the reforms, transitions. And as a business, we focus, of course, to the client, to make our companies focus on client, on industry, on competition. On the it's our business strategy. On operational strategy, we always look for the human capital and processes. And on transitional strategy, we always say digitalization. So these are our business priorities.
Thank you. Let me wish all the best to you and to Ukraine. And in the end, let me thank Irene Vantaraki for organizing it all and for the initiative to have this debate. Thank you so much and have a beautiful day. Thanks for it.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.